Today we're reading from the 11th book in the Left Behind series. The name of this book is Armageddon, and I'll be reading chapter 2 today. Whoever had figured out how to rally the panicked souls in New Babylon thought playing music over the sound system would draw them to the loudspeaker towers. So while Nikolai Carpathia's right-hand man, Leon Fortunato, spoke soothingly, "Tread carefully, loyal subjects. Help one another. Avoid danger." A recorded version of Hail Carpathia, sung by the 500-voiced Carpathiaism chorale, played in the background. Hail Carpathia, our Lord and risen King. Hail Carpathia rules over everything. We'll worship him until we die. He's our beloved Nikolai. Hail Carpathia, our Lord and risen King. Rayford hated that song and the infernal penchant of the global community broadcasting system to play it over the radio at least every 2 hours. Carpathia insisted upon its performance at his every public appearance. The stage parades and rallies in his honor always began and ended with it. Something strange was happening here, though. While the people seemed to rouse and slowly, agonizingly move toward the sound, no one sang along. "Remember," Fortunato intoned, his words pinched when he grimaced from his own pain, "those of us serving you, bringing you water and food, are also following the sound to the right places. Please be patient and allow push carts to pass. There is plenty for everyone if we all work together. Now sing along with the chorale. This takes the place of your worshiping our supreme potent's image, currently not visible." The people around Rayford were not encouraged. "I'm not singing," one said. "Death to the potent." "Watch your mouth," another said. "You'll get yourself killed." "Carpathia can't see any more than we can. He doesn't know who's talking. He's no mere mortal. I wouldn't be tempting fate." "What has he done for you lately?" Personnel inside the palace had a better time of it, Rayford assumed. They could at least feel their way to familiar places, including showers, beds, and refrigerators. Many outside couldn't even find their way back in. Rayford could only imagine the disorientation of zero light anywhere. It was frustrating enough to have been granted even diminished vision. "There are 12 separate loudspeaker towers," Fortunato said, the music mercifully subdued as he spoke. "When supplies have arrived, please be as orderly as possible. State your name so our personnel can record it in our audio disc and take your rotation of food and water." "We want answers too," someone shouted as if Fortunato could hear. "What is this? How long will it last? Why does it hurt?" Chloe knew what Ming Toy's response to this new danger would be in the morning. She and Ri Wu would want to marry right away. Everyone but Chloe had been trying to talk them out of it, but Ming had it all planned. She wanted Tyson Ben Judah to officiate from Petra via video cam. "I know it's a lot to ask of such an important and busy man," she confided to Chloe, "but I have designed the ceremony to last just a few minutes." "I think he'd do it," Chloe had told her. "I would if I were him." The same people who urged Ming and Ri not to marry, given where things stood on the prophetic calendar, were the ones who had advised against Chloe and Buck having a child during the tribulation, but certain matters were private issues of the heart. Chloe couldn't imagine not having married Buck, despite knowing how little time they had, and she couldn't get her mind around the concept of life without their precious little one. If Ming and Ri wanted a year of marriage before the glorious appearing, whose business was it but theirs? It wasn't as if they were unaware of the hardships. Starting a family at this stage was another thing, of course, but Chloe figured that was none of her business either, unless Ming asked. It seemed Buck was asleep again in seconds. She assumed George was right about his wife sleeping through his leaving their quarters. Priscilla was one of the busiest people in the compound, always up before dawn and rarely fully healthy. She often appeared groggy soon after dinner and was usually in bed by 9. Chloe was glad to stand watch, it for no other reason than to keep Buck from having to do it for the 4th night in a row. She enjoyed the routine, checking the motion detector, surveying the area with the periscope. Her daily job was hectic and demanding, spent almost entirely at the computer, contacting and coordinating suppliers and shippers of supplies and foodstuffs around the globe. That was also her way of keeping up with the news, only the news kept getting worse. More and more of her contacts were being found out, caught by the GC in nighttime raids or at a surprise checkpoints. As soon as it was discovered that these delivery people did not bear the mark of the loyalty to Carpathia, they were executed. One eyewitness reported that the co-op driver of an 18-wheeler laden with copies of Buck's The Truth magazine translated into Norwegian refused to let his cargo fall into GC hands, distracting checkpoint guards long enough for his backup driver to escape. He set the rig to roll out of control and plunged down a 100-foot embankment into a deep forge. Morale monitors shot him to death. Chloe also heard of descendants around the world, Jews mostly, who rather than being put to death, were transported to concentration camps, where they were mercilessly tortured while purposely kept alive. Occasional reports of miraculous interventions came, like an angel appearing at a guillotine site to warn the uncommitted of the consequences of choosing Carpathia's mark. Besides the fact that by now, even the last-minute decision to take the mark was futile. Tardy ones were put to death anyway. The angel had pleaded with the undecideds to choose Christ and be saved, and many did. Chloe wrapped a napkin around her shoulders and moseyed to Kenny's room. His breathing was still deep and slow, and she draped another blanket over him. He did not stir. Closing his door, she checked the motion detector, then sat before the periscope. With no evidence of anyone in the area, she could raise and rotate it for a full view. She rather liked having the contraption in the middle of her home. It satisfied some inner need to protect and control. Buck would have teased her friends and loved ones, the more than 200 who now lived underground in San Diego. All hoped to survive until the glorious appearing, but more than that, to also somehow make a difference from their claustrophobic warren. A unique feature of the periscope was that the viewer did not have to move when it did. A simple control on the hand grips raised and lowered the contraption, as well as made it scan in a circle in either direction. Chloe didn't want to think about the series of mirrors required for that. As she rested her forehead on the eyepiece and relaxed, letting her eyes adjust to the low light outside, she noticed that George Sebastian had left the scope at ground level and pointing west. The top side lens was camouflaged with fake shrubbery. It could be raised as much as 5 feet, but it was crucial to do a 360-degree scan at ground level first, to be sure no one was in the vicinity who might notice. The scan could be done all in one smooth motion at virtually any speed. But of course, the San Diego Tribulation Force had learned that the slower was better and easier on the eyes and equilibrium. Chloe's method of choice, however, was to move the mechanism 1 inch at a time, with each mash of a tiny red plunger on the left-hand grip. Another 1-inch turn of the lens brought a new 45-degree view. Thus, 8 moves cover 360 degrees. Seeing nothing due west, Chloe began her incremental scan to the right. It was just past 3 o'clock in the morning in California. Rayford had walked perhaps a quarter of a mile north from the terminal, easily slipping past men and women clearly younger than he, but who shuffled along with the painful gait of the elderly. In our effort to keep you totally informed, Fortunato announced, we bring some encouraging news. While it remains true that no light is being emitted in New Babylon, the puzzling phenomenon has not affected telephone or radio transmission. Our heating and cooling systems remain functional. Your stoves even work, unless they are solar powered. Electric and gas stoves will still burn and radiate heat, though you will not see it, so be extremely careful. Pilots flying from New Babylon or toward her when this darkness occurred report that it is confined to the city, and we do not know how long this will last. Be assured that if you can follow a path that leads you beyond our borders, you will eventually reach light. From all around, Rayford heard determination on the parts of the sufferers. I'm going, one said. Me too. I don't know where or how, but I'm getting to the light somehow. Does anyone have a braille compass? We'll wander in the circles without one. Attention, Fortunato broke in again. All senior command personnel are to meet in the Potent's office at 1500 hours. Rayford studied his watch. It's 1:15. How are they going to pull that off by 3 in the afternoon? Use audio clocks, Fortunato said. It is now 13:15 hours. At 14:30 hours, we shall turn off all loudspeakers except for the ones on the tower near the west entrance of the palace. Follow the sound there, and you shall be able to make your way to the meeting. Elevators are operational. The bottom right button is the top floor. Attendance is mandatory, but limited to command level personnel. I'm going anywhere, someone said. So am I. Get to the bottom of this. Find out what the deal is. He's supposed to be God incarnate. Why can't he do something? Rayford blinked, then blinked again. In the distance, he thought he saw light. He was getting farther from the plane and from where Chang and Naomi and Abdullah were. But if worse came to worse, he could follow command personnel to the palace entrance at 2:30 and find his people from there. For now, he had to investigate the light. Chloe was 4 clicks into her intermittent scan now, looking due east. As she studied the dark landscape, she detected a pair of pinpricks of lights. She held her breath as they became larger. Whatever they represented was drawing closer. Soon it became clear it was a car or truck. It rode to within a block of the compound, stopped, and turned around. Now she saw only the red tail lights. And there it sat for 10 minutes, then another 5. Chloe hurriedly scanned the rest of the way around. Nothing. One more click and she was back to the east section and the idle vehicle. No way she was going to wake Buck for this. It wasn't as if those in the compound expected no traffic outside. But there wasn't much else in the area, certainly nothing worth stopping for at this time of the night. Chloe wished the periscope had a telescope feature so she could home in on the vehicle and see whether anybody was emerging. The compound's hidden vehicle bay, used only at night when they knew the area was clear, opened to the east. Dare she head that way for a closer look? An individual service door, hidden next to the big one, would allow her to peek out if she kept the inside lights off. She would be 100 yards closer, and it wasn't like she was planning to actually venture out. Chloe pulled a black sweatsuit with a hood from the closet and put it on over her pajamas and sweatshirt. Over thick woolen socks, she laced high-top hiking boots. She took the Uzi, but not the walkie-talkie. She didn't want any unintended transmission to give her away, and she did not intend to get herself into a situation where she'd need to call for help. The Uzi was just for peace of mind. So was the prayer. Lord, help me or forgive me, one of the two. Chloe quietly opened Kenny's door again. He hadn't moved. She felt his cheek, moist with sleep but comfortably warm. She kissed his forehead, cool and soft. Shutting his door, she made her way to where Buck slept and planted a knee on the mattress next to his midsection. She leaned to kiss him, holding his head. If he were anything but sound asleep, that would have roused him. In the darkness, Chloe was struck by the contrast between her dark clothing and her skin, which hardly ever saw the sun. She found gloves and a ski mask, and by the time she was in the corridor that led past other underground quarters to the vehicle bay, Chloe was sweating. Their place was in the center of the complex, and four wings led to everyone else's place. She crept past the Sebastians, three other families, places, a bank of single men's residences, including Rewoo's and her own father's, two more family places, then a mixture of family and single quarters, including Ming's. Everybody knew Big George was on watch tonight, and that Buck Williams, in charge when Rayford was gone, was first alternate. That must have been why everyone seemed to be sleeping so soundly. Rayford broke away from the attentive crowd and headed toward the light. Was it his imagination? Past 20 feet, all was foggy anyway, and no one near him seemed able to see anything, let alone what he saw. The closer he got, the more the light appeared to be the silhouette of a person. But he saw nothing else and guessed it was still 50 yards away. When he had worked at the palace and lived nearby, the garages and motor pool had been in that area. Had someone figured a way to produce light? Rayford had passed through small groups of limping people, and now it appeared nothing stood between him and this what? Apparition? It looked merely bright from a distance, but soon the color became more distinct. First red, then yellowish, and finally a deep burnt orange. Yes, clearly a person, specifically a man, tall and lithe and moving. Others were within a few feet of the man, using his light to work on vehicles. They seemed in pain, like everyone else, but they worked with dispatch, as if invigorated by the light. The glowing man appeared to be able to see as far as he radiated. Let's see. The glowing man appeared to be able to see as far as he radiated, about 3 feet. Anyone who needed light had to be that close to him. Rayford realized it was Carpathia. Dr. Ben Judah had often taught that the same person came first as a lying snake, then as a roaring lion, and finally as an angel of light. Rayford had to stifle a chuckle. The devil in Nikolai surely wished he would admit more than the pathetic glow that allowed him to identify only those within a few feet of him. Excuse me for just a second. I'll be right back. Rayford realized it was Carpathia. Dr. Ben Judah had often taught that this same person came first as a lying snake, then as a roaring lion, and finally as an angel of light. Rayford had to stifle a chuckle. The devil in Nikolai surely wished he could admit more than this pathetic glow that allowed him to identify only those within a few feet of him. Rayford moved until he was among a small crowd just outside the circle of mechanics, trying to ready several vehicles for some purpose he did not yet understand. All systems are functional, Carpathia said. Yes, Lieutenant, the Jeep is operational. Turn on the lights. The mechanic did. You can hear the drain on the electrical system, so juice is flowing. Excellency. But as you can see, as we can all see or not, Carpathia said, no lights. Well, if I must, I will walk ahead of the convoy until we pass through the darkness on the way to Alhilla. I do not care how long it takes. What kind of strategy was this? The brass will meet in Carpathia's office, and then he will lead them to Alhilla? For what? And what about the thousands remaining in New Babylon? Wouldn't they want to follow to find relief? What's in Alhilla? Rayford said. Who is asking? Carpathia said. And why do you not address me with the title of honor? Nicola was looking in Rayford's direction, but it was obvious he could see no farther than anyone else within range of his hellish aura. As Nikolai moved forward, Rayford moved back and to his left, then circled around behind Carpathia. Yeah, Rayford said in a slightly different tone. What is in Alhalla? Great one. Nikolai whirled around and Rayford slipped away again. I was speaking to the original questionnaire. Who is asking? Perhaps he fled in fear, Rayford said with a gravely voice. Excellency, this could be fun. Chloe had known the long passageway to the vehicle bay to be cold and damp most of the time, and perhaps it was now. But in her get-up and in her state of mind, moving quickly up the incline past the vehicles and toward where the doors opened to ground level, she had grown uncomfortably warm. She removed her gloves and ski mask, chiding herself for having them on before she needed them anyway. Chloe lowered the zipper on the sweatshirt, then squatted to cool down and catch her breath with her back against the dirt. Between the bay door and the service door. Being that close to the surface and the outside gave Chloe a delicious feeling of freedom, less than a year to real freedom. Her knees soon burned, so she slid to the earthen floor and straightened her legs. Setting her weapon aside, she reached for the toes of her boots, alternately stretching her right and left sides. Despite her many serious injuries, she was proud that her duties in Greece had proved she was still in remarkable shape. She zipped her sweatshirt to her neck, pulled the ski mask over her face, raised the hood over that, tugged on her gloves, put the strap of the Uzi over her head so the weapon rested on her right hip and in her right hand, then stood and turned to the service door. There could be no slight opening of the bay door. That was an all-or-nothing deal. The glued-on sand and dirt and greenery moved as one, and the thing was either fully open or shut. But the service door, though camouflaged the same way, she opened as slowly and slightly as she wanted. She flipped off the light and gripped the doorknob. Rayford hurried toward the palace. He wanted to check on the others and tell them of his plan. He had experienced more bizarre events in 6 years than he could have ever imagined. And while many had been bigger and louder and wilder, this was unique. These poor people, yes, they had made their choices, and yes, they had had their opportunities to turn to God. But what a price. They were in agony. Everywhere he went, more and more people came into the 20-foot limit of his visibility. Many were dead. More sat rocking or lay weeping. All had given up looking for ways to see anything but the blackness. So thick it disoriented them. Those who tried to follow the music or Fortunato's voice limped or shuffled with arms extended to the front or sides, tipping one way and then the others as if drunk or dizzy. They ran into each other, into buildings, tripped over debris, and many simply seemed to run out of gas, slowing, stopping, and tumbling. Rayford wished he could help, but there was nothing he could do. On his way to Chang's quarters, Rayford came up with an idea and changed course. He stayed on the elevator and reached the top floor of the palace. There he tiptoed past several executives and their aides, who talked on phones or sat before computers trying to dictate but unable to see whether their messages were getting through. The phone calls all had the same theme and tone. Carpathia had a new assistant since the time when Rayford had worked with him. Chang had told him her name. He assumed she was one on the phone at the desk outside Carpathia's new office. Rayford noticed her double take when she heard him sit on the couch across from her area, but he said nothing, and she continued her conversation. I don't know, she said with a whine. He wants me to try to carry on as if I'm not suffering like all the others. But I am, Mom. There are little things I can do when he is here, because he admits this blow of some sort, and I can at least find a few things. But he's calling a meeting of the brass, and they're planning some sort of pilgrimage. No, I don't get to go, and I don't want to. He's not even telling the rank and file that their bosses are leaving. Oh, ouch. Oh, I don't know how to describe it. Cramps, I guess. A headache, like nothing I've ever had, and I've had some doozies. She sounded American, but her back was to Rayford, and she could not see the number, and he could not see the number on her forehead or hand. And it feels as if I'm carrying a huge weight on my shoulders, pressing on my spine. My hips hurt, my knees, ankles, feet. Like your arthritis, I suppose. But Mom, I'm 36 years old. I feel like I'm 75. Yes, I'm eating. I feel my way back to my apartment, and I can manage. But when I lie down, I want to sleep for 100 years, but I can't. Well, because of the pain. No position relieves it. It's like this darkness itself is pushing on me and causing all this, and it's the same for everybody. Rayford shifted his weight, and the woman froze. Hold a minute, Mom. She turned, and Rayford saw the -6 on her forehead, confirming his guess. The United North American States. Is someone there? May I help you? He was tempted to tell her he had some questions about the meeting, but that he would wait until she was off the phone. But she knew who was left on the decimated senior staff, and she would not recognize his voice. He wished he could speak soothingly to her or say something Jesus would say, but she was beyond help now. Rayford had never felt so hogtied. Sorry, Mom, she said. Now I'm hearing things. I'd better get off. This meeting's coming up, and I don't even know what he's going to want. No one will be able to read anything unless they hold it up to his light. And there are 20 expected. Yes, 20. I know. Yeah, we're down from 36, imagine. Exciting? No, not for a long time. He is not the man I thought he was. Oh, in every way. Mean, cruel, vicious, egotistical, selfish. I swear I need a thesaurus. Well, I can't. No, of course I can't. Where would I go? What would I do? He knows what I know, and he wouldn't be able to let me out of his control. No, now I just have to live with it. I don't know, Mom. It can't end well. I don't care anymore. Death will be a relief. Well, I'm sorry, but I mean it. Now don't, Mom. I'm not planning anything rash. I know you have. Well, we all have. All but Uncle Gregory, I guess. He's still holding out, is he? How does he live? You know what happens if he's found out. No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. That way, if somebody asks, I'll be able to tell them I don't know. Just tell him I'm proud of him and keep it up, but be careful. You and Dad be careful, too. If you're caught aiding him in any way. Rayford heard footsteps in the hall, and it was clear she did, too. Gotta go, Mom. Stay well. She hung up and turned when the door swung open. A big, bony man of about 50 looked wide-eyed at Rayford, and his mouth fell open. He pointed at Rayford's forehead, and Rayford noticed the mark of the believer on him, too. May I help you? Carpathia's assistant said. Who is it? Rayford held a finger to his lips and pointed down the hall. He mouthed, 5 minutes, and the man shut the door and ran off. The woman shrugged. Thanks for dropping by, she muttered. Whoever you were. Whoever it was has left, Rayford said. She jumped. And how long have you been here? Long enough to know about Uncle Gregory. I'm so stupid. I don't know you, do I? No. You're not senior staff? I'm not. Is anyone with you? No, Crystal. How do you know my name? I can help your uncle. Tell us so. I'll deny every word. Don't you want him helped? You're trying to trap me. If I was GC, I would not be able to see, would I? Let's see. I can, and I can prove it. Your colors don't match. You couldn't prove that by me, idiot. I can't see them either. I dress by sense of touch these days, like everybody else. My mistake. Hold up some fingers. I'll tell you how many. 3, and your right hand is facing me, and the 3 fingers on your pinky ring and middle. How do you know that? You mean, how can I see? You can't see. Then how do I know you're showing me 6 fingers now? All 5 on your left and the index on your right. Backs of your hands towards me. I can see by your face you're starting to be convinced. You're hiding your hands under the desk now. Crystal pressed her lips together and looked as if she was about to cry. Rayford stood. Stay where you are, she said, voice quivery, hands in her lap. Rayford slipped around behind her. That would be no fun, he said, and she jumped and spun in her chair. Now I can see your hands again, he said. They're balled in your lap, thumbs pointing. Okay, so you can see me. How? Because the darkness is a curse from God, and I am one of his. Are you serious? I can help your uncle, Crystal. How? Were you implying he has not yet taken the mark? What if I was? Then it's not too late for him. Is he a believer in Christ? I don't think so. I think he's just a rebel. A lucky one if he acts quickly. If you think you're going to trick me into telling you where he's hiding, I don't need to know that. You'd be foolish to risk telling me. And anyway, didn't you tell your mother not to even tell you where he was? She didn't respond. If you really want to help him, tell him to log on to the website of Dr. Tyson Ben Judah. Can you remember it if I spell it for you? You think I don't know that name and how to spell it? Oh, sorry. It's from his website that I know it's too late for me and my parents, my whole family, who were so proud of me. I'm sorry, Crystal. You're sorry? How do you think I feel? Ma'am, you're not going to tell anyone I was here, are you? Why would I? They couldn't see you anyway, and what would they do? Feel around for you? Good point. What are you doing here? Business. The prospect of helping your uncle was just a bonus. Well, thanks for that. You're a Judite, eh? A believer in Christ, to be more precise. Tell me something then. What's the deal with it being too late for people who already took Carpathia's mark? We don't still have our own free will. Rayford felt his throat tighten. Apparently not, he managed. I don't quite understand it myself, but you have to admit, we had plenty of reasons to choose the other way. For years. You said it, Crystal. So the statute of limitations ran out on me when I made the big choice. Well, then for sure. Maybe even before that. Who knows the mind of God? I'm starting to, sir. How's that? This hurts. It hurts worse than the pain of the darkness. Just learned it too late. I guess that you don't mess with God. And that is the end of chapter 2. Next, I'll be reading chapter 3. Thank you for joining me and have a wonderful day.